gentlemen, welcome to Pop Culture Problems. My name is Josh Nichols, and with me is my partner in podcasting, Level 9 Wizard, Oder Mano the Great.
I don't know how I feel about this, just overt stereotyping.
Stereotyping of what? What did I sound like, John?
I don't know.
Did I sound like a geek?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think that's the stereotypical. I pictured you with like horn-rimmed glasses with like the tape
in the middle kind of thing,
like you saw on Saved by the Bell all the time. That was like the worst in terms of like stereotyping what nerds or geek looked like was, I think, Saved by the Bell.
Really?
Or Revenge of the Nerds, but those were great movies. So.
I think Revenge of the Nerds, because like even Saved by the Bell, like Screech was a geek, but it was like psychedelic colored pants. It was very 90s.
And that's the thing is like Saved by the Bell, I think, was a deviation of like what the Revenge of the Nerds characters look like. That's like the pinnacle of. That's where we get our image of what nerds look like. Is I think that movie series.
No, I start the episode in jest.
In jest, yes.
Having a little bit of fun with the nerdy stereotype. But I think you and I specifically are ones not to judge other people's nerdiness.
Yes.
And I think that's the reason we want.
We have our own levels that are obscene.
Oh, yeah. You're a level 9 wizard, and I'm level 100.
Yeah.
Because I'm better. No, boy. But the reason we wanted to talk about this is that, there's a level of geekiness to everybody. Everybody has their own little...
yeah, everybody is a fan of something.
Yeah, they're a fan of something.
They geek out about something.
Now, my question is there a line? Is there a certain point where geeky is too much? And we've talked before about fans that take the show, send death threats to the actors who play characters. Yeah. Now, clearly, that might be crossing a line, but learning Klingon as a language, there's a Klingon language institute you can go and learn Klingon. Is that too much, or is that just having fun and it's something you're passionate about and it's good to go? Or, at what point is there a line and who's to judge?
I think that's really what. Yeah, I mean, who is the judge, and who's the judge, jury, and I guess geeksecutioner in regards to. I just made that word up, and I don't know if it's dumb or stupid or smart or funny, but who does get to draw that line, and because the thing is like I think for some people, like the learning Klingon and stuff has almost taken on like its own form of geekdom. It's not necessarily maybe even like a Star Trek thing anymore. Yeah. It's more of a like foreign language thing where I think there probably are like some foreign language people out there that they learned they've learned 10 languages. You know what? I'm going to learn an alien language.
Yeah, might as well learn Klingon. Why not?
Yeah.
Add it to the
or
list.
I'm going to learn the Elvish language from Lord of the Rings.
I wonder if they put that on applications then. like I'm applying for, a marketing director position. Yes. Oh, I also speak Klingon. No. Oh boy. And you have to say it like that. No. but I mean, if you
attach a sound effect with your resume.
What?
You attach a sound effect with your resume when you
absolutely
send no.
It's just when they open. It's like one of those cards.
Yes,
electronic cards. No. But, I mean, it's not something that you would put on a resume. Maybe if you're in the media industry or something. But I for me, my line where I draw the line of geekiness and being too geeky. It's not being too geeky. It's being unsafe. When you cross over to threatening an actor. Yeah. I watched a show, I think it was called Trekkies. It was an old documentary back in the 80s or something. And there was a lady who had like a shoebox in her closet. And she's like, here's all the clippings of Leonard Nimoy. And he lives over here. Like, I moved into this condo so that when I stand on my balcony, I know that his presence.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, like when you start blurring the line of reality and if you do something you wouldn't normally do in real life, learning Klingon, acceptable. Why?
Because you would learn another foreign language.
Yeah, people would learn a foreign language.
Gotcha.
Is it acceptable to move into a different house so that you can see or be in closer proximity to another human? Probably not. unless you're married to them, or
yes.
unless there's something like that.
Yeah, unless there's a family relation. Yeah,
that's
some
probably
kind of
creepy and not right. So like, I think when it gets to that,
yeah, I mean, you gotta. I think it's one of those things where like if you separate the celebrity from it,
and
you still wouldn't, and if you wouldn't do it with the celebrity variable taken out of that equation, then it's something you probably shouldn't do.
Well, and also I think that people equate, finances with things being too geeky. As an example, I collect Metal Gear trading cards, and they were printed on this acetate, this plastic, and they were really heavy, and a lot of places didn't want to ship them; they were too expensive, so they become really rare. Well, I just recently had a transaction with a guy in Warsaw, and there's people in Australia I trade with, and I actually made a website about
Russian collusion.
No Russian collusion. But
you're the one that fixed the election.
I
politics.
made a website dedicated to these cards so that, one, I can increase the value of them because I have information and I can track things.
Yeah.
I'm geeking out. I pay sometimes a lot of money for a single card. And people might say, well, you're buying a video game card for this much money and what's the purpose? Well, what's the difference of restoring an old car and buying a certain part for it?
Yeah.
Or buying a baseball card because it was Babe Ruth or, Ty Cobb or something like that. I think people draw the line with geekiness with something they think is cool or not. Cars are cool, but Metal Gear trading cards couldn't possibly. So you could pay the same amount of money for something. It brings you the same joy, but because it's in that category.
Yeah. And this is something like I've struggled with almost like my entire life because I played football. I love football, but I'm also like a huge comic book geek. I'm a huge fan of like the X-Men and all that mythology, and it's really kind of gone into all comic books now. But I've had people that have looked at me like I have three heads because I'm a comic book fan, but then I'm also a fan of football, and I'm a football coach and things like that. And people just can't like mesh those two things together. And it really comes down to I think everybody has those things that they're passionate about. Everybody has those things that they're excited about. And you don't want to, kill that like childlike wonderment that people have about something. Now, you don't let a child go and swim in the ocean without like a life preserver. So
I don't know where that came from.
You don't let someone go somewhere that they shouldn't with their fandom.
Yeah.
But it's important to let them explore.
Well, and again, I think you're in alignment with my line.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't do it in normal circumstances and normal life, you probably shouldn't do it. If I wouldn't mortgage my home to buy a car, if that's not a good idea financially, I probably shouldn't mortgage my home to buy a prop from a movie I like. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a sound financial decision, probably. So if it's something you wouldn't do on a normal, everyday basis...
Unless it's a prop from, like, Chronicles of Riddick or something like that, where it's really valuable.
And then you might as well.
There's somebody listening that's, like, a huge Chronicles of Riddick fan.
No. Open up the card again. No.
I'm going to get a death threat.
Well, I think that, for me, that's where things lie. And if you're not hurting anybody else, if you're not... And by hurting... anyone else, I mean also hurting yourself.
Yeah, hurting yourself
family.
Financially.
Yeah, if you're not hurting anyone, go for it. I mean, life is good.
There's
life
a reason that rich people have all the cool, stuff from movies and things like that, like the props and things like that.
Now, John, do you, as a comic book guy, as a collector of things, do you have like
my grails?
Yeah. Do you have your holy grail of something?
I do have my grail comics and throughout my life, like I've actually been able to acquire some of them, and that's been like really exciting. That one of them I actually was given by a girlfriend back in high school, and that was the first appearance of Gambit. Like I can't remember the issue, but it was an Uncanny X-Men, and I remember she gave that to me for Valentine's Day, like my junior year of high school, and I'm surprised we're not married.
Yeah, broke it off with her, and you married the comic book.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Immediately,
yeah, and
like,
then I found out.
Bye.
I found out that you can't marry a physical object. That's still, that's one of the things we got to change.
Yeah, but you know what? You can't take back words, and you said too much to her, and it was over. You couldn't go back after. I'm leaving you for the comic book. Yeah.
I said it just like that. Just
Yeah.
Well, see what I'm talking about, say?
So would you say that comic book is your most prized geek item that you own? The thing that you're like, oh.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that I got really geeky about statues a couple years ago.
Oh yeah,
and I have some really cool statues at my house now. But I don't know. Like my new grail, like my all-time favorite character of all time is Nightcrawler. He's one of the X-Men. He's the teleporting guy that looks kind of like a demon.
Is he always blue?
Yeah, he's blue. Yeah,
I didn't know if that was just a movie
He's covered in
thing.
blue fur, and he's got a tail and things like that. But he's my all-time favorite character. And his first appearance was Giant Size X-Men #1, and it kind of relaunched and made X-Men what it is today. And I just haven't been able to find one that I feel comfortable spending the money to buy it, because I mean,
because there's
it's
grades of
it's a fairly fairly sought after comic book, and it's a fairly valuable one. So it's just one of those things where having that disposable income to be able to buy it has been elusive for me. But that would definitely be one that I'd want to frame and like put it on the wall and show it off to people, because and that's the thing is, like, I think that's the nice thing about like geekdom fandom now, is that this stuff has like reached the mainstream where you don't have to hide it anymore.
Oh yeah. Well, and I know this is fiction, but I really love the scene in the movie Unbreakable, where Samuel L. Jackson is an art dealer of comic books and things like that, and there's a guy in his shop, and he's going to purchase one of these original cover art drawings of this piece, and and Samuel Jackson's explaining it in the detail and why it means so much and everything, and the guy's like, pack it up, give me the, I'll pay for it. And as Samuel Jackson's walking to ring it up, the guy's like, oh yeah, my kid will love it. And he was buying it for his child, and Samuel Jackson decided not to sell it to him because it wasn't about the money.
This isn't for your kid.
Yeah, this is you have to appreciate it, and I think that's where some people kind of lose sight. It's supply and demand.
Yeah,
that comic book that you really want. The only reason it's worth so much is because more people want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you were the only person that wanted it, it would be cheaper, and it would still be special to you, and it would have a value, whether it's $1 or $1 million. It's going to have sentimental value to you.
There was a couple years ago where I actually tracked down the first comic book I ever read.
Oh, okay.
And it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #6. The Archie Comics one. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures. So it was like the kid adaptation of TMNT, because the Mirage Studios Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic book was not for kids.
Okay.
But then like they adapted it for the cartoon series and the video games, and then Archie said, let's make it like a kids one. And I remember that was the first comic book I read. I bought it at a grocery store. I was at the grocery store with my mom, and I was like, "Oh, it's the Turtles! I got to get this." And I probably read that thing 1,000 times. Cover fell off, pages fell apart, and things like that. It was lost to the sands of time. But I always remembered the cover. And it was a couple of years ago. I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can find this. And I was at a comic book store, and they just so happened to have like a pretty complete run of this series, and it was in there. And I would have paid $300 for that. Just because it ended up only being like $4 or $5, but I would have paid way more than it was worth, because it was such a important.
It started it all.
Yeah, it started it all for me.
It's your timeline of that.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think those are the important ones for people. Like I've got a friend who he was a Dungeons and Dragons guy growing up, and he was at a game store playing D&D one night, and he stumbled across this issue of the X-Men where it was Cyclops fighting like a dragon on the cover. And he's like, okay, this looks sweet, because he was a D&D guy. And he bought it, and that's kind of where he started reading comic books. And it was just because, and I think we all have those moments in our lives that are like kind of the formative moments where we started down this path and it's brought a lot of joy to our life. And so therefore those, for me, it was issue number 6. I mean, we didn't even start at the beginning of the series. Yeah. And, since then, I've kind of filled in the blanks and I've been able to read that complete story and stuff like that. But I think that's something that everybody experiences that as a geek, but I almost think to a certain extent it's lost as we move on here because there's so many people that want to like read the complete story. They're afraid to start in the middle. And you really think about it, the things that you love, did you start at the beginning or did you get dropped in the middle of it?
Yeah, I there are a lot of things that I'm a completionist, and so I don't even want to. I don't want to begin something. I want to make sure I have the complete story. Or even when I own something, I own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. I shouldn't. It's not a good movie.
Yeah.
But for me, even those,
I wish I could find one of those lanterns though. The time lantern.
I remember that movie. I like having that movie just to have it to remind me of the story. Because I loved the first 2 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, and I thought they were great. And I remember, back in the day that we had a few video stores, but we also had a couple grocery stores that had small video rental sections in them. They weren't full video stores. And we went to every video and grocery store in town looking to rent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And they did not have it. And I remember crying in my mom's car. Why won't I be able to see it? I'm not going to be able to watch it. I'm not going to know what to say. And then I finally was able to rent the movie, a week later.
And you vomited for a week.
It was so terrible.
You vomited and had diarrhea for a week.
But those things I think stick with you. I recall when I first moved to the town I've spent most of my life in. Went to a big box store and they had a Technodrome from the Ninja Turtles. It was $59.95. It was on a shelf that was a board between 2 shelves on the end caps. Like I remember everything about that. Yeah. I remember being in a Woolworths building and seeing a Krang action figure. It was $19.95 and it was the robot that held the little Krang.
Yeah.
And I remember everything. I remember I had French toast that morning. I remember riding the escalator. Like it's so weird how these things impact you in such small ways. And it's similar to a kid who threw their baseball for the first time.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Or drove a Matchbox car. Or, what those things are important.
And that is the thing that I wish that everybody would, how people would approach this stuff. Because, I talk to kids all the time about, what you're passionate about and what you're a fan of. And, try to find out what other people are passionate about. And find the common ground in that you're passionate about something, because it's really easy. I don't really get that why you like that. I'm just gonna treat you like crap because I don't understand why you think that's cool. And that's not the way to approach it. The way to approach it is, hey, tell me why you think this is cool, and then I'll tell you why I think what I think is cool, and then maybe we can find some common ground. And we can be friends and be cool together.
Well, and I think there's a lot more overlap than we first think. I know you and I had this kind of epiphany moment where I was, I kind of told you about Austin Powers, how I liked that movie as a kid, and that actually got me started. That was the first action figure. Well, I had Ninja Turtles and stuff when I was little, but the first action figure I bought when I was a teenager, when it wasn't a little kid toy to play with, it was a collectible, and that was the first figure, and that led to Metal Gear figures, which led to the cards and all this stuff, and I bought a J. Scott Campbell artistic print of a comic book they were going to release. And then that subsequently led me to buy these fairy tale prints that he had done later. Yep. And I remember talking oh, yeah, I have these J. Scott Campbell. And you're like, oh, I went to his booth at Comic-Con. And again,
it's the one and only thing we have in common.
I'm not a comic book guy.
Yeah.
But I like those artistic prints. I love the Austin Powers print I got. And that was something from your world. And we both were able to get excited about something, even though you probably have no interest in the Austin Powers film like I do in that way. And I don't have any interest in maybe the comic books that you've read that J. Scott Campbell did the cover art for.
Yeah.
But we have a common ground, and we can share those memories and those experiences.
We can hold hands and talk about it.
Yeah. We're holding hands right now,
and look in each other's eyes.
Oh, wait, that's my own hand. Sometimes I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think that, when you call somebody a geek, I think it's a stereotypical thing that it can be offensive. But for me, I wear it like a badge.
And we started out this whole conversation talking about how, is there a time where like people might take it too far? And I think one area where people sometimes do take it too far is judging their level of geekdom against someone else's.
Oh yeah,
and like laying judgment, like, you know what, you're just not like a purist like I am. You can't be a fan. You can't be a fan of both Star Wars and Star Trek. You have to pick one or the other.
Game of Thrones, the show, the book. Excuse me. Exactly, having that kind of.
And I think that's like an element where people go too far. It's like, you might be like a Game of Thrones super fan and know everything about every episode and how it was filmed, what the thoughts of the actors and actresses were when they were recording that scene. But you know what? That doesn't mean that you're a better person than somebody else that's just a fan that doesn't know all that stuff.
I go back. I'm not saying I'm the best guy ever. I mean, I am. But I go back to my rule. If it's something you shouldn't or wouldn't do in real life, should you belittle someone for their lack of knowledge of something as compared to yours? Or should you boast your own arrogance about a topic in order to make someone else feel bad? No, you shouldn't do that. And so don't do that when it's concerning, something you're passionate about or something geeky.
And my thing is like, if you're passionate about it, wouldn't you want, like, I think a big thing about a really cool thing about being passionate about something is being able to share that passion with someone else.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're a total jerkball about it, and I don't know if jerkball is actually like something that people actually say, but hopefully it catches on and
maybe jerkball.
But if you're like a huge jerkball about it, and you're not going to be able to share that passion with that other person because that other person is going to shut down and they're not going to want to talk to you because you're a jerk.
That reminds me. I mentioned those Metal Gear cards that I trade, and I recall when eBay first became big, and it was like everybody was on eBay. I was looking up Austin Powers figures, which I bought. Then I moved to Metal Gear figures, and then searching for Metal Gear figures, I stumbled upon these cards. And there was a guy that sold me a complete basic set, and these cards have multiple chase sets, and I mean, there's just hundreds and hundreds of these variants of them, and so it's something you'll never ever complete. And I bought the first 100 basic set of these cards, and I remember the guy who sold them to me is the guy who said, "Oh, these are so cool," and here's a little bit of the history behind them, and he really kind of almost took me under his wing as a collector. And since then, I have a pretty nice collection. I have one of the larger, most complete collections that I've ever seen.
And you and this guy have been married and divorced. And
I know, not quite. But I've met people who have just stumbled upon them and started collecting them, and I've been able to help them start their collection.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
I've been able to mentor them and say, look, most people collect one full chase set, and then they move on to the next one, versus trying to collect one of everyone. Because they could waste thousands of dollars buying cards that they don't necessarily need to have, And then you also start small. If you get that first 100, the next 100 are a lot easier because you've got something to trade. And so, being able to share that passion and get them just as excited, it brings me back to the first card I ever got.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that is so special about like being a geek and fandom and things like that, is that you just want to be able to. We don't want to be alone in this world, and when we can share something that we love, like with somebody else, I think that's really special.
Wow, I got real deep, real quick, real deep, real quick. I will say that there are times that I've had a little superiority about knowing something or not. And I recall one of those times being such a huge Austin Powers fan growing up. I bought an Austin Powers trivia game. And I recall going through the trivia game, every single question on my own. Didn't play it with anybody because nobody else cared about the movie except me. And I went through every question of this game. And I recall emailing the company with a list of all the incorrect answers in the set. And so I listed, here's the question, here's the card, and the other question, I took pictures of the cards. I said, this answer is wrong. It's actually not correct, and here's the factual reason why, and here's the source reference. And they're like, thank you for your time. Oh, so you did get a reply. You did get a reply. They did reply, and they said, thank you for your time. I guess, if we ever do a version 2, we'll take that into consideration. Like, they didn't care. But I remember being, like, so passionate about it. I thought, well, this is a mistake. If anybody else plays this is wrong.
Did you, like, throw it out then?
No,
this is unofficial.
I don't think I still have it. I might still have it in a deep, dark corner of my collection, but I don't know if I saw that. It's not handy. But yeah, I just, you get passionate about those things. And for me, anybody listening to this is probably thinking, wow, what a geek. Again, they have judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
think to yourself.
There's something.
Yeah.
Whether it be like if maybe you're a woman that's listening, maybe you're a man that's listening and you really love makeup.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But you know what? You really love it.
And you know what passion pink is versus majestic purple.
And I don't know. I wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah. But
I'm not going to judge you for it.
Everybody has a passion. And
maybe your passion is keeping up with the Kardashians. I'll judge you for that.
Yeah. But I
bet
you
nothing
know
else.
Lines to the shows or the movies or the back relationships and da-da-da-da. If you're passionate about it, who cares? John and I aren't going to judge you. We're not going to judge you.
Well, because we're not judgmental people.
Well, no, we're good people. And if we judge other people, we know they're going to give it back twice as hard on all our geeky
yes,
stuff.
Exactly. It's self-preservation. It's not being like good or like benevolent people. It's just us. We're trying to preserve our own self-respect because people would tear us down.
So, and this might be putting you on the spot, but you mentioned having this kind of geekdom coming into mainstream, where it's becoming more acceptable, and people are okay with it. Did you ever have a time in your life, an instance where you were like embarrassed by your knowledge
from
or
about
by your
age
collection?
6 to about age 27?
Okay, just complete that whole time.
Yeah. It was formative years were difficult. Being like the only person that read comic books, was the only person that was interested in that stuff, and then also trying to also be like an athlete. That was difficult because. It wasn't acceptable back. Well, I don't want to say it wasn't acceptable, but it wasn't like mainstream. Like superheroes weren't something that was. There wasn't a new superhero movie coming out every couple months, and it wasn't something that was totally popular. And so, like, there's almost like a value in having that friend that knows all these things about the superheroes now. That value was not there when I was growing up. Like, and I was like super duper geek, where like. I remember being at like this. I went to Boys State when I was a junior in high school, and I remember some guys like quizzing me on like secret identities of superheroes, and like I knew them all, and it was like that.
And it wasn't impressive. It
really wasn't. They were just like, "Wow, that is like you really."
You know that?
Yeah, I cannot believe that you know that. But but now. I think to a certain extent that it's like embraced in our culture. Like people hear that you read comic books or like you're a big fan of Batman or the X-Men or something like that, and they have something that they can contribute to the conversation, and you can actually share your knowledge, and they're actually interested in it. And that's something that I didn't experience for the first, from like age 6 to 20 years probably.
I was trying to think of a similar situation for me, and there's always things growing up, things that you like that other people don't, or vice versa. But I recall one thing, which is it's such a funny turnaround for me. I grew up watching a lot of old TV shows, Nick at Night and things like that, and I recall that my mom would always watch Lifetime television before bed, and it was Golden Girls following by Designing Women. And I remember watching those shows all the time because my mom always had it on, and if I wanted to stay up later, like that was the option. It was go to bed or you see those shows. Yeah. And I remember loving the Golden Girls, and I probably as a kid watched every episode of the Golden Girls, or a lot of them, 5 or 6 times, in a row, over and over again. Yeah. And I fell in love with the show and the kind of that comedy styling. And when I grew up, I bought seasons of the Golden Girls, and I remember watching them. And most recently, my girlfriend bought me a trivia book of the Golden Girls. She saw it at a bookstore, and she's like, it was like $5, and she bought it for me. And I recall she was giving me a quiz about the Golden Girls, and she was asking me a question, and I would answer it. She would ask me a question, I would answer it, and I was always getting them right. And at one point, she got mad at me, and she's like, "Would you just let me read all the multiple choices first?" I thought they were fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So I knew so much about the show, and that was a guilty pleasure show for me.
Now, I have a question for you. What would you call yourself as a Golden Girls fan? Because there's Trekkies, with Star Trek, there's Whovians with Doctor Who.
Jeez.
What would a Golden Girl, like a Goldie or
a Goldie? I like a Goldie.
Goldie?
Yeah, I'm a Goldie.
Okay.
And here's the point for me. That was such a guilty pleasure show. Being a Goldie, it was such a guilty pleasure.
It's just who you are.
It was not something to necessarily celebrate. Betty White entered back into mainstream culture.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, they made Lego sets of the Golden Girls.
Yes.
They're making a version of Clue with the Golden Girls. Who stole the cheesecake? You can pre-order it right now. Who stole the cheesecake, and in what room, and what did they leave behind? It has become this cult classic show, and now it's accepable.
Yeah.
But
I actually just bought a
wasn't.
T-shirt a couple weeks ago. It's a picture of the Golden Girls, and it says "Stay Golden."
When I was in college, there was somebody running for class president, and they said, "What would the Golden Girls do?" That's what they had. They had WW. What was it?
Did they win?
I don't know. I think I still have the T-shirt though. You know, I'm proud to be a Goldie. I'm proud to be a Geek John.
They'd win now.
They would win
Yeah.
because it's popular.
Yes.
Because we are popular, as geeky as we are, and our listeners out there, if they get as geeky into this show as we get about everything else, we'll be in pretty high esteem. We'll be millionaires.
Even though we don't sell commercials or ad space.
That's true. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to Pop Culture Problems. We'll see you next time.